Melrose Place ran for 7 seasons, and 3 of its cast are dead. One was found on his bathroom floor at 57. Another died of pneumonia after fighting a virus. A third lay in his kitchen for days before a neighbor called the police. Number 1 is the woman who owned the building, and she was only ever hired for 4 episodes. Amanda Woodward arrived halfway through the first season, on the 27th of January 1993, because Aaron Spelling needed something to stop the ratings sliding. Heather Locklear was 31 years old. Darren Star, who created the series, said later that she could not say hello without an agenda. He also said the part had been written as a fairly harmless 4-episode arc, until the writers watched what she did with an ordinary line and saw that she could put a second meaning underneath any sentence they gave her. She never went home. In the end, she appeared in 199 of the 226 episodes, and she was still there in the final scene on the 24th of May, 1999, at 37. She did not know she was walking into a rescue. On the cast's own Rewatch podcast in 2025, Courtney Thorne-Smith asked her whether she had understood how badly the show was doing. She answered that if it had been limping along, she would never have taken it, and that nobody had told her. Look at the credits, and you can see exactly what she was worth. Everyone else went into the alphabetical run of names. She was billed as a special guest star even after she became a regular, and the Chicago Tribune reported that this was deliberate because it kept her card at the very end of the sequence no matter how crowded that title role became. By the last 2 seasons, she was also taking a co-producer credit, on 28 episodes. Then, the arithmetic turned on her. Charles Pratt, who ran the show at the end, said on that same podcast that the feeling at Fox was simple, that as long as Heather was on the show, it did not matter who else was. And he said the reason there was never an 8th season was that the network told him, quite frankly, that they could not afford to pay Heather Locklear. The star who saved it was the reason it ended. 4 Golden Globe nominations came in a row for this part from 1994 through 1997. She has never won one. Her marriages happened in public. She married the Motley Crue drummer Tommy Lee in 1986 and filed for divorce 7 years later. Then came the Bon Jovi guitarist Richie Sambora, married in Paris in December 1994, and their daughter Ava Elizabeth Sambora was born in October 1997 while the show was still shooting. That marriage ended in 2007. Ava is 28 now. Heather is 64, living out in Ventura County north of the city. Her last part was a Lifetime film in 2024. In April of 2020, she wrote on her own account that she had been sober for a year, and that is her sentence to say, not anybody else's. Here is the thing that reframes her. Her father, Bill Locklear, spent 25 years as an active duty reservist, commanded a battalion in the 4th Marines, and retired a full colonel. He died in June of 2024 at 94, after 68 years of marriage to her mother. Amanda Woodward frightened an entire country for 6 seasons. The woman playing her was raised by a Marine. 2 belongs to the doctor. Kimberly Shaw came in as the other woman and turned into the most frightening person on primetime television, and Marcia Cross did it without ever raising her voice. That is what made it work. The wig coming off. That bomb under the building. She played Kimberly as somebody genuinely unwell rather than merely wicked, and a generation of viewers can still describe exactly where they were sitting. The training behind that performance was serious. Marcia grew up in Marlborough, Massachusetts, left Marlborough High School in 1980 on a half scholarship, and took a degree in acting from Juilliard in 1984. Daytime soaps came first, then Knots Landing, then this. She was 30 at the premiere on the 8th of July 1992, and 35 when she walked away in the middle of the 5th season. While she was making it, her life fell apart quietly. Her partner for 8 years was the actor Richard Jordan, a serious stage and film man who had done Gettysburg and The Hunt for Red October. He died of a brain tumor in Los Angeles on the 30th of August 1993, at 56. She was 31 years old in the middle of the biggest hit on Fox, going to work every week to play a woman who terrified people. Grief does not care what is on the call sheet. Years afterwards, she went back to school over it and took a master's degree in psychology from Antioch University in Los Angeles, finishing in 2003. Everything good in her life came late and came properly. She married a stockbroker named Tom Mahoney in 2006, went through fertility treatment straight after the wedding, and had fraternal twin girls, Eden and Savannah, in February of 2007, a month before her 45th birthday. The twins are 19 now. Wider fame came later too, as Brie Van de Kamp on Desperate Housewives, 8 years of it. 3 Golden Globe nominations and an Emmy nomination that none of the Melrose years ever gave her. She won a Screen Actors Guild Award with that cast twice, and then spent 2 more years playing a president on the thriller Quantico. In September of 2018, she told the world she had been in remission for 8 months after treatment for anal cancer. And she did it on purpose. She had gone looking online and found people too ashamed to say the words out loud. Speaking about it later, she said she had ended up in a job nobody wants, that nobody wants to come forward, and that she knew people were suffering in silence. Ever since, she has campaigned about it. In 2023, she went back to the New York stage for the first time in roughly 30 years. Marcia is 64. Kimberly Shaw was the woman who blew up the building. Marcia Cross is the woman who stood up and said the word other people could not. The third name here was alive when most of these lists were last written. Patrick Muldoon played Richard Hart, and he came in the way that show liked its men to come in, charming and beautifully dressed, and then turned into something the audience wanted stopped. He never played it loud. That face worked as camouflage, which is exactly why the character landed. Before any of it, he was an athlete. Patrick was born in San Pedro, California, in September 1968, the son of a personal injury lawyer. He went to Loyola High School, then to the University of Southern California, where he played tight end for the Trojans, and graduated in 1991. Days of Our Lives made him the first actor ever to play Austin Reed, and he held that job for 3 years before he moved to Melrose Place in 1995. He went back to that same soap role for a year in 2011, almost 2 decades later. There is a detail in his contract that no other actor on that lot could match. During the 1990s, he became the only actor ever to hold an exclusive development deal with Spelling Entertainment, producing programming alongside a vice president of the company. He was acting inside a show owned by a studio that had, at the very same time, put him on the other side of the desk. Then Starship Troopers happened in 1997, and he became Xander Barkalow, which is the role people who never watched a soap in their lives still know him for. He kept working for another 3 decades, in films, on television, and on stage, and he played Edmund in a production of King Lear in 2006. Increasingly, he worked as a producer. He was an executive producer on The Card Counter and on Arkansas, and he acted in both Arkansas and The Comeback Trail. There was no wife and there were no children. From 2023, he was with a film producer named Miriam Rothbard. On Sunday, the 19th of April, 2026, he had coffee with her at their home in Beverly Hills and then went to take a shower. She found him unconscious on the bathroom floor. He was 57 years old. The immediate cause was a heart attack. When the certificate was released about a week and a half later, it named 2 things underneath it: a blood clot blocking an artery in his lung and an inherited disorder in the way his blood formed clots. He had been carrying that since before he was born. 2 of his films came out in 2026. The second one is being released after his death. Richard Hart was a predator in a good suit. Patrick Muldoon was a college tight end from San Pedro who worked right up to a Sunday morning in April. Stay with this next one, because the man whose face sold the entire series has finally explained why he walked out of it. Fourth is the man the whole thing was built around. Jake Hansen had a motorcycle, a workshop, and no money, and Grant Show played him quiet and a little bruised instead of cocky, which is why he read as an actual person in a building full of schemers. Within days of the premiere, he was on the cover of TV Guide and on the cover of People at the same time. The plan was in place before a single episode aired. Aaron Spelling put the character of Jake Hansen into Beverly Hills 90210, purely so the role could be spun off into a series of its own. That makes Grant the only actor to carry one character across the first 3 shows in that family. Before it, he had spent 3 years on the daytime soap Ryan's Hope and earned a Daytime Emmy nomination for it. and he had lost the part of J.D. in Thelma and Louise to Brad Pitt in an audition that also turned down Mark Ruffalo and George Clooney. At the premiere, he was 30, and he was 35 when he left at the end of the 5th season. And for 28 years, nobody really knew why. Then, in November of 2025, he sat down for a rare interview and said it plainly. He said he and Aaron Spelling had had run-ins. Something about Spelling felt to him like the man was trying to keep him down, and he might have been wrong about that, but that is what it felt like at the time. He said there was no question that he had to go, and that if he had been allowed to take other work outside the show, it would have been a hard call. But because he felt stifled, he simply had to leave. Asked whether the decision had been difficult, he said not at all. In the same conversation, he described that kind of television fame as dehumanizing. Life afterwards was kinder. He married the model and actress Pollyanna McIntosh in 2004, and they divorced in 2011. Catherine Law Nasa, also an actress, became his wife in August of 2012, and their daughter Eloise McHugh was born in March of 2014 when he was 52. She is now one of the leads on the hospital drama The Pit. Grant is 64. From 2017 to 2022, he played Blake Carrington on the Dynasty reboot, 5 seasons of it, on the very kind of show he had once run away from. Jake Hansen was the man who kept his head down and fixed things. Grant Show is the man who looked at the biggest job in television and decided it was a cage. 5 is a rodeo cowboy from Tucson, Arizona. Brad Johnson turned up in 1996 as Dr. Dominic O'Malley, and he brought something into that apartment complex that nobody else on the call sheet had. He was 36 years old, 6'4", and he moved like a man who had genuinely worked outdoors, because he had. His road there is one of the strangest in this whole cast. Brad was born in Tucson in October 1959, raised in Grants Pass, Oregon, and then in Dallas. He turned professional in the rodeo in 1984, and a scout hunting for real cowboys to put in a beer commercial found him on the circuit. That led to his run as a Marlboro Man, and to modeling for Calvin Klein, and then to acting. Within 5 months of arriving in Hollywood, Roger Corman put him in a film. Soon after that, Steven Spielberg made him the male lead in Always, opposite Richard Dreyfuss, Holly Hunter, and John Goodman. Critics started comparing a working rodeo rider to John Wayne and Jimmy Stewart. In 1991, he played Lieutenant Jake Grafton, a United States Navy pilot, in the Vietnam film Flight of the Intruder, alongside Willem Dafoe and Danny Glover. Later, he led 37 episodes of a series called Soldier of Fortune, and then played the pilot Rayford Steele in 3 Left Behind films. Lori, a former model, was his wife for 35 years. They had 8 children: Shane, Bellamy, Rachel, Eliana, Eden, Rebecca, Annabeth, and William. The family moved from California to a ranch in New Mexico, then up into the Colorado mountains, and finally settled in North Texas, where he restored old Winchester rifles and then sold ranch property for a living. On the 18th of February 2022, he died in Fort Worth at 62 of pneumonia he caught while fighting the coronavirus. Almost nobody knew. His death was not made public for 4 months until his former agent announced it. Dominic O'Malley was a doctor in a soap opera. Brad Johnson was a rodeo hand who carried a Spielberg picture, raised 8 children, and slipped away so quietly that the industry took a third of a year to notice. If you are enjoying this one, subscribe. There are more of these coming, and every single name in them gets checked before it is spoken. Number 6 played the only decent man at that address. Matt Fielding was a social worker who did not run a single scheme in 6 years, and Doug Suvant played him as the least dramatic person on screen, which was exactly the point. The character was the first openly gay main character in an American primetime network drama, and week after week he was simply the sensible one. Getting it on air cleanly was another matter. A kiss between Matt and a guest character was filmed for the 2nd season finale in 1994, and Fox cut it at the last minute, showing another character's reaction instead of the moment itself. Outside the building, the Christian Coalition and the Moral Majority were running a letter campaign pushing advertisers to abandon the show. Inside it, the publicity people asked Doug to make things easier by simply stating that he himself was heterosexual. He refused. His answer afterwards was that he was not going to make his living playing a gay man, and then turn around and say he would never be associated with that. 6 years and 162 episodes later, he left at the start of the 6th season, aged 33. He had been 28 when it began. The character was killed off screen in a car crash once he had gone. Something good did come out of that set, and it is still going. He married Laura Leighton, who played Sydney Andrews in May of 1998. Their son Jack arrived in 2000, their daughter Lucy in 2005, and Laura helped raise his 2 older girls, Ariana and Madeline, from his first marriage. Laura told a magazine last year that it truly was the best thing to come out of the show, and that after 26 years and 4 children raised together, they were proud of that. The marriage is 28 years old now. Doug is 62 and still working constantly. Matt Fielding was written to be a first. Doug Suvant is the man who refused to hedge about him, while it was still expensive to be sure. The next one is the hardest thing in this video, and it starts with a neighbor who noticed how quiet the house had gone. 7th, and this is the one that stays with you, is Morgan Stevens. He played Nick Diamond for 7 episodes in 1995, and he arrived carrying a face that an entire generation already trusted, because he had spent the early 80s as David Reardon, the drama teacher on Fame. That job lasted 2 seasons. For 2 years, he was the adult that teenagers watching at home wished they had been given. Before that, he was Paul Northridge on The Waltons, and he came back to the part in 3 reunion films. He was Jack Gardner in A Year in the Life. Murder, She Wrote used him 3 times, as 3 different people. Then the credits stop. His last screen work was in 1999, and no reliable source explains what he did for the 22 years that followed. There is no wife on the record, no children, nobody named as a survivor anywhere in the reporting of his death. The silence is the fact. On the 26th of January, 2022, a neighbor in Los Angeles who had not seen him or heard from him for several days asked the police to check on him. The house had been quiet for a while before anybody went to the door. Officers found him unresponsive on his kitchen floor and pronounced him dead there. He was 70. They said there was nothing suspicious about it. The coroner recorded natural causes and gave the reason as hardened arteries around the heart. He was cremated, and his ashes were scattered at sea. Nick Diamond was a 7-episode guest. Morgan Stevens was on network television nearly every week for most of a decade, and at the end of it, the person who realized something was wrong was somebody who lived nearby and noticed the quiet. Tell me in the comments whether you remember him from Fame, because that man deserved a fuller obituary than the one he got. 8, and last, is the only one who never left. Thomas Calabro played Dr. Michael Mancini in every season, from the pilot on the 8th of July 1992 to the finale on the 24th of May 1999. He was 33 at the start and 40 at the end. 22 other names came and went in that title sequence over 7 years. Every one of them walked out. He stayed, and he directed 4 episodes while he was at it. Michael began the show as a tired, decent young doctor and finished it as the most reliably awful man on television. And Thomas made the slide feel like something that could happen to anyone. He never played Michael as a monster. Instead, he played a man who kept finding reasons, which is far worse, and which is why viewers stayed angry with him for the better part of a decade. Brooklyn-born and Fordham-educated, he had done Guiding Light and a Columbo before any of this. Afterwards, he worked steadily rather than famously in television films and guest roles, then joined the web soap The Bay in 2015, took a recurring part in the drama The Last Ship in 2018, and appeared in a series called The Black Hamptons across 2023 and 2024. He married Elizabeth Pryor in April of 1993 at the end of the first season. They had 3 children before the marriage ended in 2006. He married again in 2015. Thomas is 67. Michael Mancini was the man who ruined everybody who lived at that address. Thomas Calabro is the one actor who stayed in the building until they turned the lights off. 226 episodes were shot at 4616 Melrose Place. 3 of the people who lived there are dead, and the youngest of them was 57.